Have you ever planted a grapevine only to watch it struggle for years, yielding tiny clusters of sour grapes that hardly seem worth the effort? You're not alone. Many gardeners make a few critical mistakes during the initial planting phase, which can hinder their vines for seasons to come. In this video, I'll guide you through the entire process of planting grapes the right way, from preparing the soil to setting up the support system. And stick with me until the end, where I'll reveal a simple pruning technique for the first year that sets your vine up for heavy production for decades. Let's get started. Grapes are among the most rewarding plants you can cultivate in your home garden. A single, well-established vine can yield 7 to 9 kilograms of fruit annually for 30 years or more. The good news is that once you grasp a few key principles and follow the correct planting steps, you'll be harvesting baskets of large, sweet grapes in no time. So, let's begin by understanding what grapes truly need to thrive. Grapevines aren't like your typical garden vegetables. They are long-lived perennials with deep root systems that can reach 5 to 6 feet or more into the soil. What this means for you as a gardener is that the decisions you make at planting time will impact that vine for decades. You can't just dig a quick hole and pop in a seedling like you would a tomato plant. The site you choose, the soil you prepare, and the depth at which you plant will determine whether you end up with a vigorous, productive vine or a perpetually struggling disappointment. Grapes require excellent drainage, full sun, and good air circulation. They are surprisingly resilient once established, growing well in climates ranging from temperate to tropical, depending on the variety, but they absolutely cannot tolerate waterlogged roots. If water pools around your vine after a rain, you're in for trouble. Keep this in mind as we move into site selection. Choosing the right spot for your grapevine is the most crucial decision you'll make. I cannot emphasize this enough. You need a location that receives at least 7 to 8 hours of direct sunlight every single day. Grapes adore sunshine, and anything less than full sun means smaller fruits, lower sugar content, and more disease problems. In my experience, a north-facing slope is ideal if you have one. The incline improves drainage, and the northern exposure maximizes sunlight and heat. If you don't have a slope, that's fine. But be sure not to plant in a low spot where cold air settles on frosty nights. Cold air is heavier than warm air, so it sinks and accumulates in low-lying areas. Planting even on a gentle rise can shield your vines from late spring frosts that damage flower buds. Now let's talk about soil. Grapes are actually quite adaptable when it comes to soil type. They'll grow in sandy soil, clay soil, and even heavier earth, provided the drainage is good. What they won't tolerate is soggy roots. If you have heavy clay, you have two options. You can plant on an elevated mound about 12 to 18 inches high, or you can heavily amend the planting area with organic matter and coarse sand to improve drainage. I prefer the mound method for heavy clay because it ensures the roots will never sit in standing water. Before planting, I highly recommend getting a soil test done through an agricultural lab or a local extension office. It costs around 80 to 100 Brazilian reais and tells you exactly what your soil needs. Grapes prefer a pH between 6.0 and 6.5. If your soil is too acidic, you can add lime to raise the pH. If it's too alkaline, sulfur will lower it. It's well worth doing this because if your pH is way off, your vine won't be able to absorb nutrients, no matter how much fertilizer you add. Choosing the right grape variety for your climate and your goals makes all the difference in your success. There are three main types of grapes you'll encounter. European grapes, which include varieties like Thompson Seedless and Flame, do best in hot, dry climates and are suited for subtropical to tropical regions. American grapes, like Concord and Niagara, are much more cold hardy, thriving in temperate to subtropical climates, and they handle humidity and disease better. Then you have hybrid varieties like Marquette and Mars, which combine the best characteristics of both. For most home gardeners in wetter regions, I recommend starting with American or hybrid varieties. They are more forgiving and disease-resistant. Think about what you want to do with your grapes. Table grapes for eating fresh need to be seedless or nearly seedless with thin skins. Juice grapes, like Concord, have thicker skins and a more pronounced flavor. Wine grapes are a whole different category with specific requirements. For beginners, I always suggest starting with a reliable table grape like Mars, which is a seedless blue variety, incredibly disease-resistant, and produces well even in humid climates. It's cold-hardy and ripens in late summer. One more thing about variety selection. Purchase your grapevines from a reputable nursery. You want certified disease-free vines that are 1 to 2 years old. Older vines don't transplant as well, and cheap vines from big box stores are often stressed or infected with viruses that will limit their productivity forever. Now, let's get into the actual planting technique, because this is where most gardeners go wrong. The best time to plant grapes is in early spring, as soon as the soil can be worked, usually around the time of your last expected frost. In most regions of Brazil, this means August to September. You can also plant in the fall, about 6 weeks before your first expected frost. But spring planting gives the vine a full growing season to establish its roots before winter. When you receive your bare root seedling, the first thing you want to do is soak the roots in a bucket of water for 2 to 4 hours before planting. This rehydrates the root system after shipping and gives your vine the best possible start. While the roots are soaking, dig your planting hole. This is important. The hole should be about 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide. You want it large enough to spread the roots out without bending or crowding them. Before placing the seedling in the hole, here's a technique that makes a real difference. Add a handful of bone meal to the bottom of the hole and mix it into the soil. Bone meal is a natural fertilizer made from finely ground animal bones, and it's rich in phosphorus. Phosphorus is absolutely essential for root development. It promotes strong root growth in that critical first year and improves flowering and fruiting later on. I add about 2 ounces of bone meal to each planting hole, and my vines develop much faster than when I skipped this step years ago. Now, place your seedling in the hole and spread the roots out in all directions. You want them radiating outwards, not circling or mounded up. The graft union, which is that knobby part where the fruiting variety was grafted onto the rootstock, should be about 2 to 3 inches above the soil line. If you bury the graft union, the fruiting variety may send out its own roots, defeating the purpose of the disease-resistant rootstock. Backfill the hole with the soil you removed, pressing firmly as you go to eliminate air pockets. Water deeply immediately after planting, giving each seedling about 2 gallons of water to settle the soil around the roots. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future uploads. Let's keep going. Grapes absolutely need a support system, and you need to think about this before you plant, not after. A mature grapevine can produce over 50 pounds of growth and fruit, and without adequate support, that weight will pull your vine to the ground, where it's prone to disease and rot. The most common support for home gardeners is a simple 2-wire trellis. Here's how to build one. Set 2 sturdy posts about 15 to 20 feet apart. These posts should be treated lumber fence posts or metal T-posts, sunk at least 2 feet deep so they don't sag under the vine's weight. The first wire goes about 3 feet off the ground, and the second wire goes about 5.5 to 6 feet up. Use 12-gauge galvanized wire and stretch it taut between the posts. Your vine will grow up to that first wire and then send fruiting arms along both wires horizontally. This system gives you maximum sun exposure on the fruit and keeps everything off the ground where air can circulate. If you're growing against a fence or wall, make sure it's strong enough to support the weight and that there's at least 4 to 6 inches of space between the vine and the surface for air movement. That first year after planting is all about building a strong root system and a single sturdy trunk. This is where patience pays off. You'll be tempted to let your vine grow wild and produce fruit right away. Resist that urge. For the first growing season, your sole objective is to cultivate one strong vertical shoot that will become the permanent trunk of your vine. Here's how to do it. After planting, cut your seedling back, leaving only 2 or 3 buds. I know it seems drastic, but this forces all the plant's energy into those few buds. As they grow, select the strongest, most vigorous shoot and remove the others. Train this single shoot upwards on a stake towards your first trellis wire. Keep it loosely tied to the stake every 8 to 12 inches as it grows. The rule is critical in that first year because your vine doesn't have an established root system yet. For the first growing season, water deeply once a week if it doesn't rain. I give each seedling about 2 to 3 gallons per watering. Here's a technique I use that works really well. Bury a 6-inch plastic nursery pot or an old plastic bottle with the bottom cut off right next to the seedling at planting time. When you water, pour directly into that pot, and the water will go straight to the root zone instead of running off or evaporating from the surface. This also keeps the soil surface dry, which reduces disease pressure on the vine. After that first year, established grapevines are quite drought tolerant and rarely need supplemental watering except during prolonged dry spells. Let's talk about some common problems you might encounter and how to solve them. First, if your vine isn't growing vigorously in that first year and the leaves look pale or yellow, you likely have a nutrient deficiency or a pH problem. Get a soil test and correct any deficiencies. Nitrogen deficiency is common in new plantings and shows up as overall pale green or yellow leaves. A top dressing of compost or a balanced organic fertilizer will usually fix this. Second, if you see a powdery white coating on the leaves, that's powdery mildew. This is the most common grape disease, and it thrives in humid conditions with poor air circulation. Improve airflow by proper pruning and training, and treat with sulfur or potassium bicarbonate sprays. Third, Japanese beetles can devastate grape leaves in early summer. Hand picking in the morning when they are slower moving works well for small plantings. For larger areas, apply beneficial nematodes to your lawn to control the grubs. Fourth, if birds are eating your grapes before you can harvest, cover your vines with bird netting once the fruit starts to change color. This is usually about 2 to 3 weeks before full maturity. The good news is that if you follow the steps we've covered, you should be able to avoid most of these problems. Now that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. In your second year, there's a pruning technique that dramatically increases your grape yield for years to come. It's called establishing your cordons and arms, and here's exactly how to do it. When your main trunk reaches the first wire in year 2, pinch off the growing tip. This forces the vine to send out lateral shoots. Select 2 strong shoots growing in opposite directions along the wire and remove all others. These 2 horizontal arms become your permanent cordon arms. Train them along the wire, loosely tying them every 12 inches. From these cordons, short spurs will develop and produce your fruiting arms year after year. The secret is to keep only 2 to 3 buds on each spur when you do your winter pruning. This concentrates the plant's energy into fewer but larger and sweeter clusters. I started doing this 15 years ago, and the difference in fruit size and sweetness is remarkable. Instead of dozens of small, puny clusters, you have fewer, but much more impressive clusters that are easier to harvest and better to eat. So that's everything you need to know about planting grapes for large harvests and heavy production. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. And if you have any questions or want to share your own grape growing tips, leave them in the comments below. I love hearing from you. Thanks for watching.